Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This is the Legislative Review Committee, Thursday, December 2nd, 2021 meeting. And I would like to amend the agenda. I'm going to start with the one topic, which is our festival zone ordinance or modification that we made, and that will be expiring January 31st. And staff would like to add that topic to our agenda so that we can consider discussing that extension. Can I have a motion to add that to our agenda?
I make a seconded.
Sarah, I'll let you just pick who those are, but we have a motion and a second. All in favor of adding that to the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
I think that's unanimous. If not, speak up. And then the other topic that I wanted to add, Assistant Manager Jones is prepared to give us an update about, with our emails about the Human Relations Commission. I thought it would be good for us to get an update on the timeline that we had discussed and where we are on that. And if we could add that topic to the agenda, he can give us an update.
So moved. Yes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Oh.
Hey, Avita, welcome.
Hey, I'm wondering if my video's working, but
It's not. It looks like a ceiling. There's
well, I'm
working,
here.
but I don't see you.
I'm on the ceiling. Go ahead. Keep.
Okay, all right. You're on the ceiling, or it's on the ceiling?
It's on the ceiling, but I'm here.
Okay, all right. That's good. And then, so we'll approve the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve this agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor of this agenda being approved?
Aye.
Aye.
Right. Any opposed? Okay. Looking for an approval of Thursday, October 7th minutes, our last meeting.
I'll move to approve those minutes with the one very minor modification I had emailed Sarah about.
She's got it. She's on it. Can I have a second?
Second.
And then all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye. Oh, all right.
Okay, unanimous on the minutes. Okay, so Assistant Manager Jones, let's start with information about the festival zone extension.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Commissioner Wright. Quickly, I'll go back over some history real quick just to recap so everyone's on the same page. Just to remind y'all, on February 4th, 2020, the mayor assigned to the Legislative Review Committee the topic to review and make recommendations regarding current alcohol serving opportunities for special events and public properties on public right-of-ways, including flexibility regarding shape and size requirements of drinking areas, food service requirements, furniture requirements, and consideration of the ratio of police officers required per physical size or occupancy, as well as a review of areas managed by leisure services that may be available for special events that serve alcohol. So that was a very, very long charge, and it took us a while to get through it. So February 27th, we met. May 20th, we met. July 22nd, we met. Then we went to Mayor and Commission August 3rd. It was then referred back to committee because we wanted to incorporate the public input at the time and make sure that we got the buy-in of the full commission. So at the August 5th meeting of the LRC, we voted unanimously to direct staff to revise the policy, and which went on to full Mayor and Commission on August 10th. But let me talk about some of those recommendations that came out of the final ordinance. One, we allowed an approved container or marker on the container within a festival zone. So actually, let me go back. We created festival zones, right? That was one of the bigger changes within this ordinance. Within those festival zones, we said no glass drinking vessels up to 24 ounces. We also limited the number of festival zones to one, special outdoor cafe areas, and also the number of cafe areas allowed. Also, we said that we would want to provide special conditions of permits if we needed to during the administrative review process, and that those special conditions of permits are overseen by Central Services. And finally, to clarify, limiting the festival zones to no larger than 4 consecutive blocks. Additionally, we thought this would be best as a pilot program, and that pilot program would end January 31st, 2022. Hence, that's one of the main reasons why we're here today, is because January 31st, 2022 is right here, close to us. And we think that since our past experience on this festival zone ordinance, if you will, has only allowed us to see 2 actual events. We think we need to see more events, have a little more experience to be able to provide a full recommendation on whether or not it's working. So staff's recommendation here is to extend the pilot period from 2022 to 2023, January 31st to 2023. That would allow us to get more events under our belt. I will also note that we fully expect to come back to you all to discuss some other updates probably in the next month or so that we think might need to go ahead and be enacted. With that, Commissioner Wright.
Okay, well, so thank you for that summary. And Jesse, I remember you had that great idea of making it January 31st, which I agree, but it seems that to get that extension done, we would want some action coming out of the committee today to get it in the Mayor and Commission January vote so that we don't have any gaps in our pilot program. Jesse, I saw your hand up first. You want to chime in?
Well, I was just going to make a motion to extend the deadline for, what I say, deadline or expiration of this, to extend our date to revisit it to January 31st of 2023.
And so you said you're extending the charge date?
Say that again, Mariah.
Oh, I just wanted to clarify that Jesse was saying the motion is to extend the charge date.
The extension date. Right now, the end of the pilot program is supposed to be January 31st, 2022. The motion, I believe, is to capture that we want the pilot to continue till January 31st, 2023 via staff's recommendation.
Okay. Yeah.
Knowing that there'll be some feedback happening within that time.
Yeah, and so I wanted to ask, is that going to require full commission action in order to do that extension? So effectively what we're doing is issuing that recommendation to them?
That's right.
Okay, great. I'm here.
At a committee today, then it'll be up for vote in our January meeting for everybody.
All right, I can modify my motion if you want. Motion to recommend to the full mayor and commission that we extend the pilot program of the special events permitting to January 31st, 2023, and revisit our evaluative discussion sometime before then.
I second.
Carol's hands up.
I second it too. I just wanted a clarification from Nikki. I heard the staff recommendation and I'm fine with it. But then I just wanted a clarification. You said you would still be bringing back some tweaks of it. I didn't quite.
That's correct, Commissioner Myers. So in our 2 events, I think there's been some experiences that we think that we might want to think through and maybe do a little bit better, specifically something like signage and the education of the vendors at the permit issuance process, things like that. But I think staff needs a little more time to discuss that and refine those details.
So we'd be setting this commission to extend for a year, and the other things would be like sort of tweaks that we'd have to vote on again, maybe in February, March, April.
February is what we're thinking prior to the St. Patty's Day event, if they did end up pulling a.
But that wouldn't be a whole new, that would still be the pilot program.
That's correct, Commissioner Meyer.
Okay, all right.
Go ahead, Ovita.
I was jumping in there to second so quickly because I think Commissioner Myers kind of answered my question, but and if it's the same, that's fine. But because we're recommending an extension of 12 months, and as we go along, and it's a pilot, anywhere during that pilot, there could be new recommendations that we may have to revisit based on whatever happens. Is that right? So it's not like we're just going to go through it, but we may be tweaking all along.
Yes, ma'am, Commissioner Thornton. That's absolutely correct.
Okay, that was my question.
I want to share one tweak that I'm ready for us to have. Is these are my 2 bracelets from Twilight Criterion. they shouldn't be able to be taken off and still be intact. So, you know, that whole vendor thing about strapping these down so tight that they're not passed around. But anyway, a little souvenir near there. But yeah, I think that that's the essence of the pilot. So we have a motion on the floor. Are there any more questions for clarification? Okay, looking for, all in favor of the motion on the floor, say aye.
Aye.
Any noes? All right, that's unanimous. Assistant Manager Jones, your turn for the next topic of HRC timeline update.
Certainly. I'm going to anchor back to the timeline we provided in the agenda item. At the November 2nd, 2021 Mayor and Commission meeting, the HRC mid-year budget amendment occurred, which allowed us to go ahead and hire someone, or the first position of two positions, hopefully, within the Human Relations Commission. So, you know, November 2021, we thought we'd be able to finalize the job description and budget. So we're on track. Right now, where that job description is and where that position is, it's in HR. They've already given the classification. So that's one major hurdle that we had to overcome. And then the next step is for us to go ahead and post the position. So I fully expect us to post a position within the next couple of weeks. And then, you know, hopefully 30 days from there, we're interviewing, and then we extend an offer to someone, and that keeps us on track for that March 2022 time frame where we actually get somebody on board.
Okay, so I would also like to understand with the inclusion office staff changings that are likely about to be underway with Crystal's resignation. Can you reflect for us? I think it's good for us as a committee having this information so we can share it with our GOC colleagues. Is it too early to predict that the inclusion officer would need to be hired first? Director.
Yes, ma'am. I can't really predict what we're doing from this point forward, other than one, it's going to be a huge loss that Ms. Coburn has resigned. But we certainly understand, and she will be missed. She's done some great work here. She did great work in the HRC process. You know, she and I had many conversations, and I just reflected back with her on the process, and I really thought it was a good one. So we're going to miss her. But that being said, obviously we have to keep going forward, and we have named Selah Gardner as our interim. Have full confidence in Selah. She's been in this position before. I know she'll do a great job. But to answer your question, Commissioner Wright, I can't see the future on how quickly we're going to be able to move forward with this news. That being said, you know, we're going to continue to work hard. You know, we've talked a little bit, and I know there's been some emails going around about the process, and I think that's something that you know, staff needs to have more discussion about, specifically with the interview process and then the onboarding process. So we'll start putting that stuff together, and, you know, happy to provide you all with an update via email or come back to the LRC on that.
Okay, committee members, do you want to, Avita, I see your hand, and just be thinking about that as an opportunity for us to share or learn if there's more input that staff wants from us since we worked so hard on the commission development. Avita?
I just want to go back to the job description. I think System Manager Jones stated it would be posted in about maybe 3 weeks or so. Is it possible for us to get a copy of that or be notified when it's posted? A lot of things get posted and people ask me about, and I'm not looking in that arena of jobs. Is it possible for us to get a copy of that job description, or at least when it is going to be posted?
Yes, ma'am, we can do both. We'll certainly send it out to you all, to everyone. And additionally, we can certainly let you know when the job is finally posted. We expect that to happen within the next couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Commissioner Myers, Carol, do you have a question?
Yeah. I guess I just want to have some sort of discussion and some of my concerns, you know, alleviated here in terms of the timeline for public getting members onto the HRC. Are we set on that? And it's not clear to me whether or not we're set on that for the beginning of January or not. What I'm more concerned about, and I think I said this in an email, was that's fine with me if we have this extensive new approach to making sure we get a really broad, inclusive number or applicants from different parts, the diversity that we talked about having on this. And who's the person who's going to be thinking through that process for getting that information out and being intentional and more directed in terms of getting that kind of representation in the applicant pool? Do we have someone? Is this new person? Do we have a structure, a plan for that?
That's a good question, Commissioner Myers. I can answer it in a couple of different ways. So first and foremost, Crystal's still with us. So we're going to get all the knowledge we can from Crystal while she's here to kind of help us shape, this process, because, it is her process or part of her process. So we're still going to get information from Crystal. That being said, Sayla's here. She's been with Crystal the entire time. So again, I have full confidence in her that we can help craft, a process, if you will. In addition to that, I can't see the future, and I don't know if we want to wait till we get somebody on board, because that would be probably too long as far as a full-time inclusion officer, or do we want to, have some additional conversations internally, which I think we need to have anyway, to kind of talk through whether that January timeframe is accurate, or what timeframe is accurate at this point in time.
I'd appreciate getting some kind of written update process with some specifics in it that lets us know how we're going to be doing this in a new way to get that broader applicant pool. Having just gone through the interviews on Monday, I just, how are we going to do it? I mean, maybe we're going to be overwhelmed with applicants, but again, we need, if you look at the list of the people, the groups covered, there has to be some real specific outreach in a different way to get the youth, to get person with disabilities, and so forth through that list. So I would like to know that I want to know what the process is and how we're doing that, so that we can also report that back as this process goes through, because I think we're going to be looked at carefully, both for this HRC and the new Public Safety Oversight Board, in how we get applicants and then the whole process.
Right, Carol, I agree with you on all those points, and I want to get to Sherry here so she can speak to some of those details. But and another reason I wanted to talk about it today is because we spent a great deal of time in our HRC LRC time discussing how we wanted this new board commission to have what it's going to be the best outreach we've ever done, and potentially be, new ways of communicating its timeline, the application process, so people aren't just learning about it and the application's due 48 hours later. And I felt that was all pivotal to the staff that we had also have this budgeting for. And that's why I chimed into what I thought was not an accurate timeline. Ambitious, yes, but I didn't think it reflected the work we felt needed to be done to describe the commission, the work for it, the onboarding, the time commitment as well. And then once that's set, then there's the marketing of it and the outreach. So let me get to Sherry, but I do think there's more work to be done that can't be done by the January idea. Sherry, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to chime in with regards to those questions, Commissioner Myers, because I do think there's kind of two components. There's the marketing side of things and how it is going to be marketed, for lack of a better word. And then I think there's the question of how does the or how does the interview process take place? And one of the things our office has been in discussion with Gene Spratlin about is, a question of, do we need to change our application process? And we have advised Clerk Spratland, that we would suggest that our application itself remain the same. There are reasons that we don't call out certain factors that may be of interest, and we would advise that that all be handled through the interview process. So it sounds to me that there are two kind of areas, the marketing side, but also the interview process that's going to need a lot of attention. And so I'm not entirely sure who needs to speak to that, but I just wanted to share that at this point, our office has advised that the application itself remain the same.
Go ahead, Carol.
I do want to follow up on that because I think that actually in our last round of application, the interviews on Monday evening, one of the boards was down on the bottom of the list, has a couple of, I think it was the defects board, has a couple of requirements, you can be in this category or that. And I was concerned about that. So we actually had one of us ask each time, okay, one of you, we need to have people who represent these different groups. Could you tell us how you feel, whatever the words were. And I thought actually that did a really good job of addressing that, which would keep it out of the application and more in the interview.
Yeah, and I think it's important as long as everybody's getting that same question. And some of the things with the other boards, authorities, and commissions, there are state regulations on, and I think the ADDA is that way. You have to have a business owner, you have to have a property owner, or that sort of thing versus, but I don't know that those are the kind of things that, Sherry, that those aren't necessarily discriminatory characteristics. So that's where we want to be very careful in this sort of realm. Again, and I think part of the reason for these two inaugural boards, I think another reason for it to be further in the spring is to where we might have a open space person-to-person interview process versus the video version of it that's going to allow us to be able to discuss more and ask more freely what are the qualifications you bring to this commission. And when you're talking about a specific commission, I would hope that we would want to make sure that people are very comfortable in being able to share what they bring, experience, qualities, characteristics type thing. Jesse?
Thanks. Yeah, I guess two things. The first is I wanted to clarify, are we looking for any kind of motion here, or was this just sort of update discussion and move on?
That's right. There's no
Okay.
action coming out of here. I thought it would be good for the five of us to hear what we're thinking since it's in an email thread and help. And if there were questions, like Carol outlined, that I guess Nikki's hearing and knowing that there, as staff learns more, that we get updated. Does that help our committee?
Yeah, that helps me understand. I guess I'm just thinking I don't want to spend too much time on this topic when we have another one to get through. I'm not actually super eager about that topic. I'm super eager to be done with that topic.
I know we should quit talking about the Human Relations Commission and get on the leaf blowers.
No, well, it's more just that you get where I'm going here. I think we all want this off our list. But the one, I guess, other thought I'd share is just, as I recall, my mind might be faltering here a little bit, but we had a lot of discussions with staff on what was the soonest timeline that was feasible for staff to actually see through this process. And as far as how we would handle all the outreach and what role staff would play on making sure that went well, I just trusted that the inclusion office was going to be equipped to handle that really well. I thought we were pretty clear on all that. So my concern now, and thank you so much, Selah, for taking on the role here for us and stepping up. But now you're one instead of two, and I think there's a lot of transition that everyone's going to be thinking about at the same time. And so in my mind, I would still like to see us do this as soon as we can, but it's perfectly appropriate, as far as I can tell, for the timeline to be extended, like our goal for when this is happening, based on what the new analysis of staff's capacity by staff is to see it through, if that makes sense.
Go ahead, Selah. I see your hands up.
Yeah, thank you. I agree, Commissioner Holt, and echo what you said, Commissioner Myers, in terms of the way that this process unfolded was very much in line with there being a very strong outreach and marketing campaign kind of ahead of the application process. We talked a lot about utilizing, community pipelines and getting this information out to community partners. We talked a lot about, radio ads and things along those lines to make sure that we were reaching a diverse population. I think all of that still is in alignment. However, I also remember that the purpose of that marketing and outreach HRC staff member that's in the agenda packet was so that there was a staff member in place that could really help to facilitate that along and make sure that this was a strong marketing campaign and that this was, a role model for BACs kind of moving forward. So in terms of getting that person in place, I do think we're still on a good timeline with the job description at HR, and those pieces are moving. However, from the inclusion office's standpoint, Crystal and I both have very much been in agreement that having that person in place so that we can properly get this marketing and outreach campaign off of the ground before the applications go out, I think is critical. So I agree, Commissioner Wright, that I don't know if the application process going out in January before that person would be in place is the best laid plans for what we heard from the LRC as the model that you were looking for the implementation of this commission.
Yeah, well, thank you. And that's the kind of feedback I thought it would be good for us to hear as we have the discussions with the whole mayor commission. Anybody else want to share, staff or committee? Sayla, did you have more? Okay.
No, that was it. I'll put my hand down.
Thank you very much. Sherry, your hand's up.
Sorry, it's from earlier. I apologize.
Okay, let me check. And Carol's hand is literally hand up, so I know that one's current. Go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, and I guess I would reiterate now with this new information about losing Crystal, that sort of adds to the discussion that we were already having. And it sounds like the office is, and everyone's well aware of that process. I think even the training, the onboarding process as well. I mean, you'd have a little bit of leeway, perhaps we could have the interviews and people wouldn't start for 2 months, but that has to be a doable timeline. And considering that we are missing one, we're down a person and really down a person and a half or 2 people because we were depending on getting this other position. I think it's really important for this to be rolled out. And if it can be, if we can somehow get it delayed a little bit, but communicated very clearly what the steps of that rollout will be, I think the community, I think that being transparent and clear with the community about the need to wait a couple of months is better than rushing it out if we're concerned about being able to get things done like they should be.
Okay, Jesse. Wait a minute. Let me.
Yeah.
Brian, did you have your hand? You're good.
Oh no, I didn't have my hand up. I'm good. Yeah, thank you.
She's like.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that I think, we've already said that we're going to post this in January. So I think it can't hurt to post, especially if the idea is we're going to keep the application process the same, post it in January still and just leave it up for however long it needs to stay up and just let staff update us on what the new deadline will be. But maybe just initially post it without a deadline. If anything, that could help to get an even larger pool of applicants. Right.
Well, and since it's new news and we all understand the overlap between, I was glad to get the update that the parts of the job description and everything are already set. So again, I just wanted everybody to get that update, and then staff will keep us updated. I would imagine that the inclusion office and its staffing would potentially have feedback for us as they discuss and work on the details we've talked about, including onboarding, best practices. Remember when we were learning, there's 2 different ways to do it. Do you guys prefer it be this way or that way? When I had mentioned I thought it should go back to committee, I didn't mean it as a strong hand, but to be available and have enough time for the inclusion office to bounce things off of us as needed. Okay, anything else? And then otherwise we'll go on to the headliner of the committee.
Well, Commissioner, Wright, if I could, real
Yes,
quick, I just want to make sure we're clear on staff's responsibilities here. HRC job description should be sent out to the entire mayor and commission. When the position is posted, we'll notify you. Additionally, internally, we'll work to create a process, put it in writing, and show how DEI qualities will be incorporated as it relates to marketing and outreach, and we'll share that with the mayor and commission once we are done.
that sounds good to me. How about committee? Everybody, that sound good? Okay. All right. Assistant Manager Jones and your team.
The
I know
headliner.
Off now, and let's see who the leaf blowing team is.
The leaf blowing team. Oh, wow. So we're going to start with our building inspections director, Doug Hansford, but the whole team is here. So we have central services, we have leisure services, we also have solid waste. All these folks play a role in this particular topic. But actually, let me share my screen, and then we can start from there.
Legal, we got double legal.
Of course, we always have legal. They keep us straight. Okay. I'll kick us off, and then I'll hand it over to our building inspections director, Doug Hansford. So the mayor's charge was to review the regulations related to the use of gas-powered leaf blowers, including as it pertains to our noise ordinance. And that was given to us November 4th in 2020. So now we're revisiting this topic. Well, what we wanted to do, our approach here is to look very specifically at regulations. And if other questions arise, if we want to take this, further down the path, we can. But we really wanted to stick to the charge. That's why Doug Hansford is going to lead this presentation. He's going to speak to us about current regulations on the books and how that may impact gas-powered leaf blowers. Doug, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Okay, thanks, Nikki, and thanks, commissioners. Appreciate you having me here to speak on this. First of all, I want to say that I had the opportunity to work with Crystal Coburn, and she's the utmost professional. She has such a kind and sincere nature about her, and I'm going to really miss working with her, but I do wish her well. So getting to the ordinance, this ordinance is part of our noise ordinance with the county, and it basically covers the use of motorized landscape maintenance devices. I won't read the whole thing to you since it's on the screen, but I do want to point out a couple of things about it for your consideration. So in this particular noise ordinance, which is different from some of the other ones, it doesn't talk about noise levels. It just says that you cannot use landscape maintenance devices, and they list a few: leaf blowers, lawnmowers, chainsaws, within any residential zoning district or in areas within 300 feet of a residential zoning district. So you can basically take your zoning districts and then a radius of 300 feet around those. You just can't use those devices between the hours of 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. in the morning. There is a lot of residential development in our agricultural residential zones, which are more rural in nature, but we do have subdivisions and single family homes in those areas. They allow you to use that type of equipment in a little bit longer time frame. So 9 p.m. at night to 7 a.m. in the morning, you can't use those. And that's within 300 foot of a residential dwelling for both of those, actually. So wanted to point that out. If you'll notice, there are exclusions or exemptions for manufacturing, governmental, or commercial entities in the normal course of business. We've only had one official complaint in the last few years on this particular ordinance. It was in the 5 Points area, and we got compliance on it. I'll tell you though, when somebody calls in, if it's not a violation of this ordinance, we don't really register it. So what our people do that are answering the phones, if someone calls in and says someone's using a leaf blower or a lawnmower, and we ask them what time frame they're using it, and we would just advise them either that is a violation, we'll make a note of it, or it's not a violation, and then we wouldn't make a record of it. But in talking with our code enforcement officers, they don't recall a lot of complaints on this over the years, and it may be because people know the ordinance. One thing I wanted to bring up, and I may lean on Jerry to make an interpretation on this on the fly. When it says that a commercial entity can use these things in their normal course of business, and that's exempted. I don't know if a landscape company that drives out to a neighborhood and uses these things outside of these time frames would be exempt or not, because they are a commercial entity and it is in their normal course of business. So that's one thing that maybe the committee might want to consider. And I'll just stop there on this ordinance if you'd like to go ahead and have a discussion, or I can go ahead and talk about construction noise as well, whichever you.
I'll say briefly that as I peruse these resources that Commissioner Myers sent out a little bit earlier, it seems like a number of municipalities around the country have banned the use of gas-powered leaf blowers, not just for noise concerns, but also emissions and air quality and their relationship to health, and also list a number of alternatives, the resources on alternatives, so people would still be able to address the issue of leaf maintenance, et cetera, through other means. And so I just wanted to put that out there as something we should perhaps consider. But that's it for right now.
Okay. Yeah, it's just we can share the direction we want to go to, and I was thinking that we'll learn what we have on our books so that we can do some comparing and contrasting and digesting this to see and understand what recommendations we want to then dive deeper into for our community, such as what you just brought up. So, but does anybody else want to chime in on anything at this point, or let staff keep going? I think we'll keep going. I can't see everybody. Yeah, keep it going. Jesse says keep it going.
Okay, the other aspect we wanted to bring up that's kind of similar, but it's not directly related, would be construction noise. And we've all probably lived near construction sites. They're no fun to live near. What I tell people, though, that call us and complain, I says there is an end date to that construction, and they need to follow all the rules that are in place. So construction noise can't happen. And I want to differentiate that. You can have construction any time of day or night. You just can't have noise that's audible. Let me see. More than 100 feet beyond the property line where the construction is happening cannot be plainly audible within any residential zoning district between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. That 11 p.m. is pretty late. We don't usually see construction happening that late at night. However, we do see construction sometimes start before 6 a.m. And we have had complaints, and we have dealt with those complaints and gained compliance in all cases, as far as I'm aware. There are times, but the ordinance provision does have the possibility of a variance that I could grant. And I have granted variances to construction sites over the years. Sometimes if you have a really large concrete placement, in the summertime in particular, they need to start really early before the weather gets too hot, because the really hot weather, like in July and August, can dry out that concrete too quickly. And so another reason I grant those variances at times is because traffic is a lot less, obviously, very, very early in the morning, and you have a lot of concrete trucks coming in and out. But by and large, this ordinance is adhered to, and we do enforce it as written.
Thank you for that, and explaining where that variance can come in. And is there a sign that goes on the construction site when you give that variance so that people aren't calling in about it?
There's not a sign that's required, but what is required is that they notify all the property owners or tenants that are adjacent to the construction site. I make sure that they notify all of them that it's going to happen. And I'll tell you, most of the complaints I get are before it happens. They say, "Hey, we got a note that they're going to be pouring concrete starting at 4 a.m. this morning." I said, "Yeah, well, they have a variance for it, and the variance is issued for one time, and then we'll consider future instances separately."
Okay, that seems to be working well. And the other thing is, as we go through this, if staff will also be making notes of things that they would like us to consider to help your job and what you're doing, to modify this as well.
Thank
Okay.
you. I appreciate that.
All right, let's keep going.
Okay, the last section just talks about nuisance conditions on a property. It's anything that might generate smoke or fumes that might cause an annoyance. This is not something I'll just say we rarely have any complaints about this. There have been times where people will complain of the smells. We had one down off of Barber Street, and we never could identify where the odor was coming from. We think it might have been some chemicals associated with either the poultry plant or maybe the water reclamation facility, but it seemed to go away. And so it's on the books, but it's not an ordinance that we typically have to deal with much. And I think that's the last of the ordinances that we wanted to highlight for you guys. But if there's anything else, any other information that we can bring to you to help in your decision making, we'd be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you. Committee, or Assistant Manager Jones, what's next on your side with this topic?
That's all we have. We just wanted to go through the regulations that touch on gas-powered leaf blowers. Obviously, the last ordinance that we looked at, the nuisance ordinance, spoke to the fumes that may come from a gas-powered leaf blower. As the Director of Inspections has noted, that we really don't get that complaint very often.
Okay, committee members? Go ahead, Jesse.
So I will start by reiterating that I am happiest at whatever gets us done with this quickest. But as I understand it, this is in front of us because a colleague of ours who's no longer on this committee but used to be really wanted it. So, part of me feels like if we're going to tackle this at all, we should probably try to loop them in or get their take. But what I've understood, I don't think I can speak for Commissioner Edwards, but what I've understood from him is that the argument from this is primarily about health and environment, although the annoyance of leaf blowers and what I would also argue their utter futility and absurdity is, something to maybe be annoyed about. But I don't think we're going around trying to pass laws because things are just annoying. So I guess if we're looking for more information, I would say that information around the public health risks, especially for the people who work and have to use those every day, would probably be the paramount one for me. And then if there's any information about environmental impact, I've heard some things from Commissioner Edwards, but something in this formal setting seems to be appropriate. Thanks.
Well, would it be appropriate for at our next meeting staff to share with us the personal safety things that are done for our staff and employees who are using this sort of equipment? That could share with us that safety elements? Is that something the committee would like to learn so we can speak on that? No?
I think that sounds good.
Mariah, okay.
Yeah, I think as well, just to reiterate again, I think there's a lot of good resources on this page that Commissioner Wright sent out. So I hope that we as committee members will take a deep look at that, because I think that might answer some of our questions around environmental and public health risks. But I also wondered if it might be helpful to also look at these things through the lens of legal justification for a change to the ordinance, since we are restricting how people can use their private property. I'm not sure if that is going to come into conflict with, the will of the body, or at all shape what we are able to do ordinance-wise. And so, as we look at that information, thinking about what of it will be helpful or to create a legal justification for any ordinance changes.
Gotcha. I think on that note too, the private property use is one thing, and the other thing that is if we can have for the next meeting, or if somebody's prepared now to explain where is it that you can send in the complaint when you see someone blowing all their debris into the street and then clogging up our drains and that sort of thing. So if we can have something on that, Assistant Manager Jones, next time, unless somebody, I think some of this might be just if we did something in the water bill to help everybody in the community understand what we have in place to adhere to it. Part of me thinks that making sure the complainers understand what's in place with it, us to help when constituents call. I mean, if I had a magic wand, I would love it if the leaf blowing could only be done on the day your roll carts go out, so that at least you could have some days of peace of mind. But it is a little bit too much to be regulating and legislating with that. Carol?
Yeah, I'm not sure this is exactly a quick way of going about it, but I know that staff did a really good job with some of the HRC comparisons from other communities. And I kind of would like, I don't know that much about this other than when I would stay at my mother's up in New York, where landscaping had becoming a norm, even a very middle-class neighborhood. Noise. I mean, I'm assuming that a lot of it perhaps has to do with health, but in terms of residents and others, it's a noise factor. I mean, I couldn't sit outside there for periods of time because there were so many leaf blowers all the time. The houses were fairly close. So I guess I kind of would like to know what kind of ordinances there are, if you could categorize the types of ordinances, whether they're done to, for noise, health of employees or others, air, how that works legally with what we can do here in Georgia is another thing. And then I also would like to sort of know if we do anything that restricts them, how can you, the effect on businesses, any kind of transitions that are allowed for businesses to adjust. There are a lot of people working in this area and there's a lot of equipment. So, I mean, even in my neighborhood now, I see, big, trailers come by with all this equipment, and they're not really big, large, they're not really big, large businesses. Some of them are rather small local businesses, and how we would, how the business community, how it would affect the business community as well. And I don't know if that's something that staff can prepare for us. Again, my first year here, some of these things are all in progress, and this is the first thing I'm starting new with. So is that something staff does, or we're supposed to do how's that work?
Well, my recommendation would be that is a dissertation level of inquiry, which is fine. But as a committee, we need to, I'm wondering if we want to digest this topic from presentation. I can share some of the emails or the topics. Maybe we all shift and sort of do our own little research about this before I would want to vote from this committee to agree that much time of staff would go into presenting that whole matrix of information that you're interested in. I think that we need to. That's where I would go before just saying I want to know this. So maybe we could be thinking along the lines on this topic for the next meeting, so that staff can. So we can have more pointed questions about the direction we want our committee, which means lots of staff time,
right,
on it as well.
Allison, I mean, who can I get the background? I mean, I know this is on our agenda, and I know it's Commissioner Edwards who is really interested in this. Do we have but the mayor put it on our agenda. Is this?
Well,
Why is it because of health or noise, or should we just have conversations with?
Yeah, well, so it's a little of both, and the amount of input that comes in and complains is it's annoying, similar to what Jesse said. It's annoying, but how many things are annoying that we really can't do anything about, as well as its effect on the livelihoods of businesses, as outlined in the first slide. Last fall, I think, when the pandemic was happening and everybody was shut in their house, it was even more apparent what was happening outside of their house with their neighbors' things. Another area I think that we need to iron out and understand to learn if there's anything we can do about it. The residential people who are residents in downtown are dealing with our staff's leaf blowing in a business district. And so if we would want to understand if we wanted to tackle that, because now there's more residents downtown, but yet, and then maybe the next meeting we could have somebody compare and contrast how it is that leaf blowers can be happening at 6 a.m. downtown, and residents complain about that for that. And we already want to learn a little bit about the safety and understanding that those that are using those, if our staff are being properly covered. So that's another element. So again, it's noise for those who don't want to use it, but there's an interesting article that said they're annoying and the sound of them are really annoying unless it's yours.
Right. And I think there's also the whole, they are a large, user of gas, carbon pollution, greenhouse gases. And I know there are more, they're more environmentally healthy gas leaf blowers coming on the market all the time.
Right. And if we wanted to, mimic what California's doing and phase out and that sort of thing, that's a huge thing. And I think that we should be thinking between this meeting and the next, how much of this we want to tackle, and how much we want staff to explain to us about what we're doing, learn if there's things they want us to improve on, and learning if there's anything we can do in downtown for it to be clean before the business is open, because I think the business persons wouldn't want the leaf blowing to happen when they're opening their doors. And that's probably something that staff either wants to tell us about today or at the next meeting. Jesse?
Thanks. This will probably be the last time I try to weigh in, but a few thoughts. I guess first, from a noise perspective, I think it's important that we figure out, and all these things are things that others have already touched upon a bit, but like how and why we distinguish leaf blowers from other tools, mowers, hedge trimmers, saws, etc. I think the same can be said for environmental effects or health effects of gas-powered versions of those tools. It's just weird to me that we're targeting leaf blowers specifically. I think we would want some kind of justification for that. The one I've heard from Commissioner Edwards when I was kind of asking him this was like, they tend to just be used for so long in so many places. There's sort of this proliferation over that. From a legal perspective, I have a hard time justifying making a law about that. I do think it'd be good for us to poll this committee or even the full commission on whether there's interest in a ban on gas-powered two-stroke engine leaf blowers, which, as I understand, is kind of the specific thing because that Commissioner Edwards was looking for. Because it's sort of a moot point if there's not much appetite, which kind of brings me to, we're talking about priorities here, and I think I could easily, I'm going to spare you, but I could easily rattle off a list of 470 things that I'd rather be talking about and rather be tasking staff with than this. So and I hate leaf blowers. There's this William Shatner song that's hilarious. And he goes the leaf blowers. Is there anything more futile? And that's all that comes to my mind whenever I hear or see one. I hate them. But there's so many things that I think are stupid. And I just don't think it's our role to legislate what we think is dumb and annoying, unless it's particularly harmful. And there's just so many things that are very harmful to the environment. So maybe I can be convinced that someone will convince me that leaf blowers are the thing that we can do for the environment. But there's lot of other things I've heard pitched that we can do for the environment that I feel like are a bigger priority than this. Insofar as we have staff that are using these, which I understand we do, I think there is very convincing evidence that the carcinogenic effects of using these are real. I think it's very impractical to expect that any amount of PPE is really good to be wearing for hours at a time, carrying a very heavy pack on your back all day. If people want to do that on their own property, I'm still not convinced that we should make a law that says they can't and start devoting code enforcement and police resources to enforcing that law. But I am convinced that we should get rid of the practice of using them for our staff. So, insofar as there's a need to direct staff with some kind of policy to eliminate the use of them with our staff or anyone we contract with, I'm in favor of that. But beyond that, I just want to be done with this. Thanks.
Okay. Well, I think we all sit through different colleagues' priorities. Conflicting priorities is clearly something that we always have to deal with, and listen to other people's priorities that aren't our priorities. So I get that.
I smell what you're stepping in.
I totally get that. So is there, from the brainstorming we're doing, Assistant Manager Jones, do you have some staff input that can help in any of the categories we're brainstorming around?
Well, sure. And I think I would offer first several thoughts. First and foremost, I think it's really important for all of us to understand that if we were going to legislate something, it would be very hard to enforce if it were not our own. And I just want to be clear on that, right? So, speaking up for staff here, I just don't want to see staff in a position where they're having to try to do an impossible job, and enforcing something like this to a private citizen would be extremely hard. If the direction is for us to look at our own internal policy, I think that's a little bit different. And I think we can certainly come back with pros and cons of gas-powered leaf blowers versus electric leaf blowers, what we're currently doing with electric leaf blowers versus gas-powered leaf blowers. So I certainly think we can do that. And I think a final thought is, there are some things that we probably could do today with the ordinance while taking an incremental approach. For example, Commissioner Wright, you mentioned downtown. We know that we don't get a lot of complaints about leaf blowers, but the ones that we do get are from downtown. Now, the odd thing about downtown is that we have more and more people living in downtown, yet you are allowed to, the time frame of leaf blowing is different because it's not a residential area. So that is something that we could look at specifically that could make an incremental change and maybe make some folks happy. And that's all I would offer.
Okay. Yeah, that's a very good point there. And as Carol had mentioned, well, and I guess maybe we should have legal share that whole reality of what we think we can legislate and what we really can't in that front. I also do believe that I don't want to be in a do as I say, not as I do thing for our unified government. And if we can, I think there's a lot of things we do as a good example to for the community. So I think that it would be beneficial for us to learn how that affects our inner workings if we were to phase out the gas type blower. Is there any legal chiming in that could be done to help us understand not going down a road we can't even enforce type thing?
Sure. I think that, what Assistant Manager Jones has shared about the difficulties of enforcing with private individuals is absolutely true. I think when we think about any kind of ordinance, we're trying to restrict someone's ability to use or to do, a certain thing. In this case, we're not dealing with a protected class. So the standard review would be a rational basis test, which thankfully is the easiest test to try to overcome. I think the downside is that it may be, well, one, I think we absolutely would expect litigation over something like this because we're immediately going to have a big impact on a lot of people's businesses, if nothing else. And so a lot of people have a significant interest in trying to get an injunction against this at the very least. So we need to be prepared for that. And then, the second question is, do we end up running into problems establishing a rational basis? For instance, how do we justify this? And I think many commissioners have talked about that really well today. If we can tie it to public health effects, but then I think there's some vulnerabilities there, which is why I think to Commissioner Hull's point, why is a gas leaf blower any different than a gas lawnmower if we're talking about noise and health effects? And so, we would certainly be on the cutting edge. As far as I know, no one in Georgia has passed one of these, so it'd be a case of first impression. So there's just a lot of risk. But we can certainly try to provide something more detailed, but prior to the next meeting.
Well, that's enough for me right there, for us to just continue to discuss health improvements for our employees and the environment of which is happening, whether it's at the parks where public is, or and making that healthier. That's something that we could hear more about today, or maybe the next meeting, of what that would look like. And I'm sure that a phase out equipment wise, there's going to be money involved too, if the equipment we have now is going to get phased into a different type. And the feasibility of that would be necessary for us to learn.
Commissioner Wright, if we could come back next month with some information for you based on what staff is doing today, and as it relates to gas-powered leaf blowers versus maybe electric leaf blowers, we can certainly do that. Additionally, I think that may give the attorney's office a little more time to kind of research some of the legal justification and maybe what others are doing. And you mentioned a comparative analysis, Commissioner Myers. I think we could probably put a short comparative analysis together in a month's time. Maybe look at 3 or 4 cities, what they've done, and how that could relate to us.
That's good. And I would think Andrew would want us to look into the solar powered leaf blowers if those have come into market. Just keep me posted, so we can be on the cutting edge of that as well. And I also am interested in learning what we could do to modify, if it's reasonable to have some changes for that downtown complaint that is increasing there. If there's some things in the ordinance that you guys have in mind that we could support and still get the work done. I know that Commissioner Edwards thinks a broom would work just as fine, or one of those little pickup things, versus just, as he says, chasing down the street, one little piece of litter while blowing everything up at the same time. So, and hopefully when Clayton Street's done, that'll be so clean from everything just flowing down into the stormwater. Jesse?
Yeah, I'd just like to point out that staff already has a request for us to get different equipment. So if it is a priority for this body to see a shift, we're obviously going to have to buy that equipment. I don't really think this committee needs to make any decisions in order for the staff side of things to be handled, especially with Andrew Saunders at the helm. I'm just assuming, that we'll get budgetary requests for the equipment needed in this regard without us having to spend any more time on it in a committee.
Jesse, you've made it very clear this is not something you want to talk about, but others do. And well, speak to it. We need to be able to speak intelligently to what comes out of the committee and our processing of it.
Well, and I'm making it a point to say these things because if we're going to speak I don't feel compelled at all. We've lost 2 of our colleagues in this committee meeting already. I think we need our colleagues who want to see action provide compelling reasons for why we need to take this action. Why, if we're going to have, how did you put it, Attorney Hines, a case of first impression? Yeah. As compared to all the things that we could be digging our heels in court about, tenants' rights, workers' rights, affordable housing policies, why this is something that we should be considering fighting injunctions over. Like that, I want to hear that from our colleagues. So insofar as they may hear or see this meeting, I invite that information to be transmitted to us before we discuss this again, because it's hard to see all on my own.
Right, I understand that, as well as all the leaf blower hating people who have been waiting for us to talk about this. We can get some input from that. Sherry, you've got your hand up. What can you share with us on that?
I was just going to add, I think, to a point you made earlier, and to what Assistant Manager Jones, I think, had also shared. We certainly could change the ordinance very easily to make it so that it, applies to all sorts of districts, or the commercial downtown district. I mean, that's certainly the easiest thing to do. And I would echo the fact that when our office receives complaints, it is always the downtown district. Obviously, we'd have to, you'd all have to weigh the policy goals there as it affects Athens-Clarke County and business owners and things like that. But that would be a very easy and fast modification that could be made with, I think no problems.
Yeah, I would like to see that. And I do agree with what Sherry had said earlier, that I don't want to, Jesse, I don't want to go down the road that's going to involve even more in litigation on this topic. I think we're on the same page with that, but learning what we can do internally so that we have studied this as directed and we can speak to it when emails come to us or our colleagues, that, and then we can move it along. But I do want to do and consider the recommendations that Sherry just outlined, and they said would be quick and easy. And we've done our job, and we'll continue to add topics. I do want to add okay. All right. Does that sound good to everybody? Assistant Manager Jones, we've got some more. We'll do a little bit of this and see how we added 2 topics already on top of this. So we'll be open on that as well for the next meeting.
Again, just to be clear on staff responsibilities for the next meeting, a small comparative analysis about what other communities are doing, legal justification, and some pros and cons about gas-powered leaf blowers versus electric leaf blowers as it relates to ACC Gov staff.
Yeah, and the how we could deal with the downtown zone.
Ordinance.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. That's right.
And I'm less inclined for you guys to spend time doing that legal comparison out of state. I know that there's a lot of times we'll have a topic that's happening in a different state. I'm not ready for us to be the first in the state on this, as Sherry had outlined. I would rather us stick with getting our house in order and being a good example and being able to get a better ground of, because the calls and the emails that I got were just, I felt really, really bad for the people living downtown that could not think, study, sleep, whatever they were trying to do because of how early our leaf blowing started. Okay. Well, now we're down to 2 of us looking for, in the committee, looking for a motion to adjourn. I think, Assistant Managers, we wrapped up enough, haven't we, as far as the feedback? Jesse, we're moving along.
If Carol's absence counts as a second, I'll make that motion to adjourn.
It does. Her chair, there she is. Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, and she's ready for a second. All in favor of adjourning? Thanks, everybody. All in favor, say aye. Carol said she's got thumbs up. Okay, we are adjourned, and we'll make sure we have a quorum for the January meeting, when that time gets a little bit closer.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for all your work.